Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How are you?
Uh,
Okay. Hope you had a nice weekend. I guess everybody's, I don't know, sleeping in today. But at least I have a few of you. So today I'm gonna introduce you to JavaScript. So we'll start that. There'll be a homework, but it won't be due on Thursday, right? You know, your projects are due on Thursday. So the homework that I assign will not be in due for another week. So a week from today will be the assignment. Um, we'll look at your projects briefly on Thursday as a class and talk about them a bit. And then I'll continue with JavaScript. And I'll also have project 2 available for you to look at on Thursday as well. That will cover the rest of the class, right, until the end of June. So you have a couple weeks to work on that one as well. Essentially, what it's going to be is a kind of continuation of this project, unless you want to change, with the addition of JavaScript. Okay. So with all of that, does anybody have any questions though about things with regard to their projects or HTML so far, or CSS, anything that you're having troubles with that you're trying to do before I jump into JavaScript here? Anything, any last words, HTML and specifically? I mean, we'll still continue to do HTML, but we're adding JavaScript into the mix. And no questions? Everybody's good so far? Hey there.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, well, since nobody has much to say, a little bit about JavaScript. So the web as we know it has only really existed for about 30 years, a little bit more. The technologies that I've been introducing to you have been evolving over that time. Actually the web, really what was known as the World Wide Web, right? Starts in the early 90s, and around 90, between say 89 and 91 is when that sort of comes to being. HTML comes to being. And so originally there were no graphics, there were no colors really, there was no interactivity other than the links you clicked on. It was a way for people in universities who were doing research to share their research among each other, right? Without having to send the papers by mail or something like that. They would just put the papers up in the web and everybody would be able to look at the research that they did, and they could share their research. And there was email, of course. It was all text-based. You couldn't see anything, no images, nothing like that. You could send images, but because people there were no such things really as high-speed connections at the time, sending even the smallest of images took a really long time. We had dial-up connections, right? You sent them through telephone lines. In the early 90s, around 94-ish, JavaScript came out, and JavaScript is a language that adds additional interactivity primarily to a web page, so that you can like sort of code what are little programs that are attached to your web page to cause things to happen, as you'll see in a minute. It's a programming language that requires the web, requires a web browser to function. So that's why we call it a scripting language and not a full-fledged programming language. If you are familiar with programming languages, then the ones that you actually make programs that stand alone all by themselves are things like Python, Java, not to be confused with JavaScript, C++, right? Those are like standalone programming languages. A language like JavaScript requires a program like a web browser to work. So it's sort of like it's a piggyback, right, to the browser. So we call them scripting languages. They don't stand alone as applications. but they have a lot of the same features. So the language that I'm going to be talking to you or starting today, the features that I introduced to you work with all modern programming languages. So if you have some experience with other languages, you'll see that a lot of the stuff that I show you today is familiar, or that I start to show you today is familiar because it's very similar to the way other programming languages look and act and behave, with some small differences here and there. So JavaScript tends to be a little bit more forgiving than other programming languages. You can make tiny mistakes. Not as much as HTML. With HTML, you can make big mistakes and it kind of works okay. With JavaScript, less so, and other programming languages, even less so. But it's a totally different thing from JavaScript. Now, today we have things in addition to HTML and JavaScript. We have CSS, which came out in the late 90s, which is the styling language that you already know that goes along with HTML to make it look pretty, among other things, add animation and stuff. We have other languages that allow for interaction with databases. We have Python, which can work with the web as well, and other languages. So many programming languages now can work together with web that we've learned to create all the stuff that we see in the internet now. And so in a way, even though I'm teaching you a good amount with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, there's still a ton more to learn. So if you're interested in programming, this is really kind of just the beginning of things. You can do a lot more. But now is when we really get into web programming with JavaScript. All right, so we're setting up our folders the same way, with the addition of with one extra folder, which I call JS for our JavaScript files. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen so you can see how I set it up. So it's folder set up the same way we've been setting it up. You have the CSS folder, the HTML folder, images folder, JS folder, and then we have our index. And this is what our index looks like so far. I already have added CSS, as you can tell by the color. I'll show you that in a minute. So here's the code for this file. I already have the CSS link here also, so you can go ahead and type that. And then I'll show you the CSS that goes along with it. Okay. So standard, right? Basically, the only additions are that and that to the template. And then here is the CSS. Again, pretty standard here. So I will say that if you're just accustomed to just following along and not typing the code that I type, and then doing that by video later, I know one or two of you do that, some of you do that. that's fine, but for JavaScript, it's less ideal. I highly recommend that while we're working on JavaScript, that you actually follow along and type the code the way I type it, because you're going to encounter errors, new kinds of errors. This is sort of the bad part about coding, is that errors are the hardest things to find sometimes, and with JavaScript even more so. So I highly recommend that you follow along very closely with the way I type my code. The minute you get behind, if you get behind or stuck, or if your code doesn't work the way mine works, please stop me immediately, okay? Please don't be shy. Please don't be shy. Just stop me. I want to help. So that's the whole point here, is to help you find your errors, so that's how you're going to learn how to find your own errors. And because that's a big part of learning to code, is looking for errors, as you probably already know by now. So I'm not in a rush. If you want me to slow down, if you want me to repeat myself, whatever, go back to another file, whatever, just stop me and I'll do that. Okay, does your page look like this? With a color and such?
Yep.
Everybody put a thumbs up in the chat, please, if you got it to work so far. Or somewhere. So thumbs up somewhere so I can see who's got it, who doesn't. So good. All right, great. Cindy, Inshu, you got it? Are you with me?
I got it.
All right, very good. Okay, so this is basic stuff. We're not going to spend too much time on style and stuff today. We're going to just work on JavaScript. So that said, we need a file to type our JavaScript code. And that is going to be in this new JS folder, that I have right here. So I'm going to right click on that folder and choose new file. Before I do anything, before I type any code here, I'm going to name my file, So I'm going to save this. And I'm going to save it into my JS folder. And I'm going to give it the name script. There's going to be more than one of these. 01.js. Script 01.js. Okay. And that goes into your JS folder. Now, just like when we're coding CSS, we have to create a link, to the file that this belongs. So this is going to be connected to the index, just like the CSS file. So we're going to go to the index, and we're going to create a link to that new file. Now, it looks a little different than this, a lot different. But it's the same idea. It connects that file, that new JS file, even though it's blank right now, it'll connect the JS file to the index. And this is what it looks like. I'm going to put it underneath the link tag here. So I'll hit enter. And I use the script tag. The script tag has a pair, right? So the opening script tag and the closing script tag. But it also needs an attribute to connect to that new file, right? So it's src equals, and then js script01.js. Now, nothing's going to happen yet, right? If I save this and reload, nothing changes because we don't have anything in that file yet. But we do have to check to make sure that everything is connected, right? So once I create my link here to the script01 file, then I go to the script01 file. I need to type something here. I'm going to type a sort of basic command called alert. This is what we call a function. I'll talk about it in a second. We don't use it that much. There's another one that works better. Inside those parentheses there, we're going to put a pair of quotation marks. And then between the quotation marks, we type a sentence or something like hello world. Make sure you get the parentheses correct, right? Opening and closing. Make sure you get the quotation marks correct, opening and closing, and make sure you put a semicolon at the end here. And then you can save that. And then we can reload this page. And that something like this should pop up that says hello world. This is what it looks like in Firefox. If I open with Google Chrome, oops, it looks like this. This isn't a Mac, so it'll look slightly different from a PC, if you have a PC. But the idea is you get this little box that says hello world and then an OK button. I recommend that while you work with JavaScript, that you use either Firefox or Chrome. Don't use Safari if you're on a Mac. It's not a really good web developer browser. And I also wouldn't use Edge. I think that's a terrible browser too. So if you don't have Chrome or Firefox, I recommend that you download them into your computer and use one of those instead. I also don't know, like there's certain tools we're going to use in the browser that we haven't used before, and I don't know where they're located in Safari or Edge. So if you're using one of those, I can't help you. They'll probably be similar to what I show you in Firefox or similar to what Chrome is, but you know, it won't be exactly the same. Okay, so now we know that this works, right? Did your little alert box pop up? Did everybody see that little box that popped up? If I reload the page, that is what it looks like in Chrome, and this is what it looks like in Firefox, at least on a Mac. Everybody got that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank you. Anybody who didn't get this? This is super important. Because if it didn't work, nothing else is going to work. Okay. So this is like a test, right? In a way, we've made a test to see if the two files are connected. And if it doesn't work, then we know that the two files are not talking to each other. So we need that first and foremost. All right. Now, the next thing I want to do before we go any further is open up some windows here that will help us as we're typing the code. And I'll show you in Chrome first. In Chrome, you go to the View menu up here. This is when you're in Chrome. Go to the View menu, and you go Developer and Developer Tools. And this sidebar opens up. I want you to click on the top word here on the sidebar that says console, because that's what we're going to be looking at, the console, the most. Now, if you're in Firefox, it's a little bit different. You go to the Tools menu, Browser Tools, and Web Developer Tools. And for Firefox, it opens up down at the bottom here instead of on the side. If you're using Safari or another browser, I'm sorry, I don't know where that stuff is, unfortunately. Let me see if I can find it in Safari. Let me see. I never use Safari, so yeah. All right, so it's not in the View menu. I don't even know. I have no idea. I don't even know if it can do it. Maybe it can't. I'll have to look it up later. All right. Don't know about Safari. Sorry. But I do know about so if you have any questions about Google, just let me know. About Chrome, let me know. Okay, so we want to make sure we're looking at the console here, because we're going to be sending information to the console, which is this box here. And this will also print out information that's useful for us. Sometimes it prints out stuff that's not useful for us, so we can just ignore that. But other times it's useful information that can help us to understand what's going on in the page. So what is an alert function? I'm going to sort of define some of the things we're seeing here. And I'm going to do this using comments. Comments are, I've shown you how to do that in CSS and HTML. Comments are ways for us to remark about the code without it being read as code, right? So here I'm going to type some comments. So if you just want to type one single line of comments, you just put the two slashes, and whatever follows is going to be a comment. If you want to type multiple lines of comments, then you type a slash and an asterisk to start, and then an asterisk and a slash to end. So that's a lot to put there. The alert function, as we'll see many different functions, is a word like alert. Sometimes it's just a letter. Sometimes it's an abbreviation, right? Or a couple words jammed together. It's in a word or an abbreviation followed by a pair of parentheses. That's what a function looks like. Some word followed by a pair of parentheses, or some abbreviation followed by a pair of parentheses. And that's how we can tell visually what a function is. If it's a word that's followed by a pair of parentheses, we know it's a function. And a function is like an action, something that the browser is going to do. In this case, what the browser does is bring up a pop-up window, right? And whatever we type between the parentheses is the parameter, what we'll see in the pop-up window, right? So when we load the page, we get a pop-up window, and what we see in there is what we typed between the parentheses, right? You'll notice that in the text that we see here, hello world, it does not include the quotation marks, right? It's whatever is put between the quotation marks. We'll talk more about that in a second. But this is what we call a parameter. The alert function requires one parameter, right? So this is one thing here. The one thing that we put between quotes. We consider that one thing. We call that a string. And again, I'll talk about that in a minute. We could also put other things in there besides text, right? Now I'm going to comment out this line of code so it doesn't create this box again. So when I comment it out, right, now I need to save it. And if I reload the page, it doesn't happen anymore. That's a way to it's kind of like erasing it without erasing it, right? It just deactivates the line of code. Okay. So today is really kind of an introduction to a lot of terminology. And just like when I introduced you, remember just a couple of weeks ago, I introduced you to HTML, and I'm sure the first couple of days I introduced you to a ton of stuff. I don't expect you to remember everything, right, in the first day, because I will be repeating a lot of this stuff. But if I say a word that you don't know what I mean, if you think it's a technical word, just stop me, right? I mean, I really want you to stop me at any moment. Interrupt me. I like being interrupted because that means I know you're listening and you're engaged. So, and you need help, right? So just stop me. Chances are the question you have, somebody else probably has too. Okay. Especially when we're doing JavaScript, because I think JavaScript is quite a bit more complicated than HTML. Okay, so let's see, what am I going to do next? So there are basically in JavaScript three sort of types of data, types of information, right? Categories of information. Oops. The first type is what we call string data. And that's what I've just shown you. String data is any set of characters put between quotation marks, including alphanumeric characters, some punctuation. So we have the alphabetical characters here, but it also includes punctuation like the comma and the exclamation point and the space, right? And the space. All of these are considered characters. We have the H character, the E character, the L, blah, 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 right? So if we were, oops, I just moved it. So what we have here, how many characters do we have here then? Well, we just have to count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the space, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, right? So I'm just pointing that out because the space is considered a character, and the comma and the exclamation point are considered characters. So that's string data, but it's not a string unless you put the quotes, right? Now, if you don't put the quotes, you're going to get an error. So if I try to run this, right, I just took out the slashes there, so now it's activated. If I try to run this, you get an error. My error, since I don't know if it's exactly going to say the same thing as yours, but my error says uncaught syntax error, missing parenthesis after argument list. Now, that's just not correct. If you, but the browser is doing it best it can to try to understand what you've done, right? So it's assuming you're typing JavaScript correctly, which of course we're not, right? And so it assumes that you are, and it's like, hey, by the way, you know, I know you're great and you're typing this correctly, but something's going on here and it's not working. It's telling us it's missing the closing parenthesis. But if I look right here, we have a closing parenthesis. So basically, sometimes it doesn't tell you the correct error. Other times it does. But at least we know there's something wrong here, right? And so I'm telling you, if you're trying to make words appear that the user can read, you need to use quotation marks, right? Otherwise, it's going to read it as code. The browser does not understand the words hello world. It just repeats what you're telling it to say, right? It knows the H, the E, the L, the L, the O, the comma, and so on, right? It knows those are characters, but it can't read English. It doesn't know what that says. It just is mimicking it, right? It's just spitting it back out for you. Right? So now it works again, right? And the error is gone. But I do want to comment that out. So this is what we call a string, because it's a series or a string of characters between quotation marks, right? A string of characters between quotation marks, string data. All right, next. We have numerical data, which is easier to understand, right? This is all numbers, right? Whether positive or negative, integer or decimal. Sorry, I'm just going to make myself have more space here. Including numerical operations, such as addition, subtraction, etc. Okay, let's see that work. Let's see what numerical data looks like. I'm going to just go ahead and put it up here. Alert 100. Now, for numerical data, we don't put quotes. We only use quotes for strings. Okay? So if I save that now, what I'm going to see down here, it's just going to spit it out again, right? I mean, what I'm going to see in the box, it's going to see 100, right? It just says, okay, you told me to tell you that, and here I am telling it to you. If you put negative 100, same idea, right? Negative 100. If you, like I said, you can also use numerical operations. So we could do, I don't know, 10 times 10, right? Now, one thing you should do whenever you're typing code and you know something's going to happen, like we're using a function, you should always have a kind of idea about what you think will happen, right? What is your hypothesis about what the browser is going to do? Now, if this were my first time doing this, I might think, if I save this and spit it out, I know what the alert does now, but I'm not sure what I'm going to see. Am I going to see 10 times 10, or am I going to see the product, right? Am I going to see 100? So if I see 100, right? So when you present it, when you put in there a numerical operation, it's always going to carry out that operation. It's always going to carry out the operation, whether that's multiplication, whether that's division, right? We get 1 in that case. Or say addition, right? We get 20, or subtraction. So it's always going to carry out the operation. So 10 times 10 produces 100. We're going to come back to that in a bit. Actually, we'll come back to both of these. The third and final type of data is what we call Boolean data. Does anybody know what the word Boolean means? Have you heard that word before, Boolean? It comes from a man's name in the 19th century. But it means data that is basically based on true and false. So Boolean data is, and there was something in the 19th century that was invented, a form of algebra called Boolean algebra, and that's where all algebraic expressions were reduced to true or false statements. That sounds kind of complicated, but it's an early necessary stepping stone for the creation of computers. So in order for computers to work as we work now, computers are based on Boolean data, ones and zeros, true or false. That is Boolean data. Whenever you see ones and zeros, if you've ever heard that idea of computers being based on ones and zeros, then that's Boolean data. Everything is sort of reduced down to true or false statements. So Boolean data is true, false, or 1, 0, right? Where 1 is equivalent of true and 0 is the equivalent of false. So how does that work? Well, there's different ways to produce Boolean data. You could just do alert true, right? It's a word, but it's not between quotes, right? So the computer does understand true. It does understand false. This is a kind of data. It's a value, right? So we get true because it understands that as not a string like hello world, but a piece of data. It's not a series of characters. It actually means something. We could also do it like, say, using a comparative statement, like 10 is less than 10. What do you think is going to come out of that? Well, we know that's false, right? 10 is not less than 10. 10 is equal to 10, right? So that's a statement that is false. When I save and reload that, we get false. If I were to put 10 is greater than 10, I get false too, right? I get that false again. If I put 10 is equal, notice I have two equal signs here. That means equal to. The two equal signs means equal to. If 10 is equal to 10, I get true. Right, so those are the three kinds of data. We use them all. In other programming languages, it sort of breaks it down even more. Particularly numbers. When it comes to numbers have more. There are more types of numbers, believe it or not. The computer breaks it down because some numbers require more computing power than others to think for the computer to think about. So there are different types of data for different types of numbers. Okay, but that's the alert function and the three types of data. But we're not going to use the alert function very much. Instead, we're going to use another function called console.log. It's a little different. There's actually two words separated by a dot. We'll come to why that is at another time. But it's basically a function. It's a couple of words followed by a pair of parentheses. So this is an action that the computer is going to do. It's going to cause the computer to do something. And what it's going to do is it's going to send information to the console, right? This is the console in the browser. All modern browsers have a console. So instead of having it pop up a window here, it's better because we don't want the user to have pop-up windows. We want to see the data as we're developing the website. The user could see this, but it's really for developers, right? For people who are creating websites to look at this. I bet you've never, has anybody ever looked at the console before? No, probably not. You probably didn't even know it was there. But that's mainly for developers, but anybody can access it, obviously. I just showed you how to do it. If there were something in the console for you to look at, you could look at any website and see if there's something there that you could understand. So you could go to any website. Let's see what Google says. Google.com. I'm going to open up the console. It has a whole bunch of crap here, right? It talks about what's happening with security and cookies and WebGL and blah, 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 right? Some alert. These are not errors. These are what we call alerts. When it's in yellow, these are sort of, you see the little exclamation point that just notices in a way. All right. Any website may or may not have stuff like this. Okay. But what does console log do? Well, like I said, it's going to send information to the console. Basically, it works just like the alert, only it's going to send information here instead of in a pop-up box. So I could put, say, 10 times 10 there, reload my page, and I get 100. Now, of course, we can do the console and get the same results in many different ways. I mean, it doesn't have to be 10 times 10. We could put console.log and 90 plus 10 will produce exactly the same results, right? 100. You get 100 again. So it doesn't really tell us anything about what's happening in here, but we know the result of it, right? All right. So I'm commenting those out just as I demonstrate, because I don't want a whole bunch of things to pop up. It's just annoying. What if, is everybody getting this? Is it working in your computer properly, in your console? Everybody sees stuff coming up in their console? Yeah, I hope so. Nobody's talking. I saw Zach nodding his head. He's the only one.
Yeah, it's working.
Yeah, I have.
Great. All right. Now, what if we did something a little crazy? Not really, but what if we did not numbers, but strings? What if I put 10 like that between quotes? What is it going to look like here? Well, it's an alphanumeric character, right? So the browser is going to just regard this not as the number 10, but as a 1 and a 0. The characters 1 and 0. It is not a number, right? And because it's not a number, it looks like a number, but it is not a number. It will not function as a number. The act of putting this between the quotes will make it just be a string, and strings behave differently from numbers. So when I run that now, notice it's white. Before, when it was a string, this is in, I don't know if, I'll look at Chrome in a moment. Before, when it was not a string, if it was a number, it would be in Firefox, it's green. Let's see what it looks like in Chrome. In Chrome, it's purple. In my case, it's purple. But if it were a string, in Chrome. I think it's going to be white too. Let me see. Yeah, it's white. So that's a little cue given to you by the browser that this is not numerical data, but string data, is the coloration of it, right? Now, how do numbers and strings differ? Well, what if I put 10 plus 10, like so, both of these being strings? We know what numbers do, right? It just adds them together. So this creates the 100, right? Both of these. But what if we do strings like that? Well, when we run that, we'll see it doesn't add them, it just lines them up one after another, 10, 10. This is what we call concatenation. This is actually a word that you can use in regular language. To concatenate something means just to line it up one after another, right? So when you're lining up, when you put a plus sign between strings, it just lines one after another in the order that you type it. Okay, let's investigate that a little bit. We're going to be using concatenation a lot. So I'm going to spend a little bit of extra time on this just to make sure you understand how it works. We use concatenation all the time. We can concatenate an entire web page. We'll see that later in another class, probably. All right, so let's do that some more. Console.log. What if the first number were a string, but the second one were numerical? What's going to happen then? The same exact thing. Whenever when we have the presence of a string, whatever follows, if you use the plus sign, whatever follows is going to be concatenated with it, and it will convert the whole thing into a string. So this 1010 is a longer string, right? 1010, even though we concatenated it with a number. Okay. Longer string meaning one with more characters, right? The same goes if we did the opposite, right? If we did console.log 10 plus 10. Same thing's going to happen, right? We get a longer string. Okay. What if we did something longer than that still? Console.log 10 plus 10 plus 10. Now, before you run this, don't run it. I want you to think in your brain, don't run it, please don't run it. This is just like little tests that you do for yourself, right? So I want you to think in your brain, what do you think is going to be, before you look at it, imagine what you think it's going to be before you run it and look in the console. What do you think it's going to show in the console? It's always a good idea to have a little bit of an idea prior, right? This is what you kind of have, it's like a hypothesis. Okay, I'm going to type this line of code and I think this is going to happen, right? Given what you already know, right? What I've just told you, given what you've already know, what do you think is going to happen now with this slight little wrinkle, right? Well, so what do you think is going to happen?
1020.
What's that?
1020.
1020. Okay, that's one possibility, right? Where we have the 10 is a string and then it does this, but it adds those two together, right? Instead of concatenates them. What else? What is another possibility? Well, couldn't it just follow the same pattern that it did, right? 10, 10, 10. Now we have to look at it and see what happens and figure out why that happened, which is exactly what's going to happen, right? It's going to be 10, 10, 10. Why did this happen? Well, the first item here is a string. And we know that when we're doing an operation that it goes from left to right, right? So this gets connected to that. So it turns that into a longer string, 10, 10. So this goes first and it becomes a longer string, 10, 10. Then 10, 10 is added to 10. And so we get 10, 10, 10. So it converts the whole thing into a string one piece at a time. That's why we get 10, 10, 10, not 10, 20. Okay. All right. Another one. What about that? What do we think that's going to be? Before you run it, I want you to have in your brain what you think it's going to be. It's okay to be wrong.
Maybe like the, I think like the same thing maybe.
So maybe the same thing. So since we know that that happened with this one, it could be 10, 10, 10 again, right? Anybody? What's another possibility? If not, let's say if not that, what else could it be?
Any
Well,
10,
what's that?
any 10.
Yeah, it could be 2010, right? I think those are the two possibilities here. A third possibility could be, and any of these could be, we get an error, right? But it's going to be 2010. So if you save that and run it, this one is 2010. Now we have to figure out why, right? We know that we got 10, 10, 10 from this one. Why did we get 2010 from this one? Why do you think? Anybody? Why did we get different
Like-
results? Go ahead.
You like you type it at first, like
Yeah, it proceeds left to right, right? So it starts left and it sees a number and then a plus sign and another number. So it's, of course, it's going to add that, right? From left to right. So it's going to do this first. We get 20. Then it sees a plus sign again, but now it encounters a string. So it's 2010. But this presence of a string makes the whole thing into a string, right? So it's this longer string, 2010, even if the first little operation that it did was a numerical operation. Okay, so we're going to be using this, and it's also the order of operations, right? So if we did, for example, you guys know PEMDAS, right? Where it's the order of operations is the addition, subtraction, right? And then parenthesis and all that stuff. The order in which all the different operations happen. Whatever's in between the parenthesis always goes first, right? Or exponents actually also. So, for example, what if we have 10 plus 10 times 10? Well, what do we think is going to happen here? Don't run it. Nobody wants to guess?
10, 100.
Yeah, it's going to be 10, 100, right? Because, oops, it does multiplication first, always before addition, right? The same with division. If this were a division, right, it would do that first. Then we get addition or concatenation. So that is why this ends up being 10, 100 instead of 10, 10, 10 or something, an error or whatever. Okay. Any questions about that? Alrighty. One more of these. What do we think we're going to see here? Again, don't run it.
Ten plus 10.
Yeah, exactly. We see the characters that were, because it's all between quotes, right? It does not view this as an operation. This is not a numerical operation. It looks like a numerical operation, right? But because it's in quotes, the computer does not read it as an operation. It just sees a 1, a 0, a space, a plus, a space, a 1, and a 0, right? So that's exactly what we get. We see what looks like an operation, but it's in white, so we know that it's not numbers. It's not numerical. Okay. Now I'm going to give you a little task. Print to, oops. Right. Print to the console. Or log, I should put log, just not so I don't confuse you. What I want you to do is log to the console the following. I want to see this whole thing from one, let me put that in it, from one console.log function. I want to see in the console 10 plus 10 equals 20. But you cannot type the number 20. Okay. So I want to see this come out in the console. The whole thing, 10 plus 10 equals 20. But you cannot type the number 20. Can you do that? Or try? Raise your hand if you think you got it. Or thumbs up or whatever, or type something in the chat. Good, Cindy. Okay. So if you get it, send me a private message with the line of code, right? With the console log. I want to see what you typed in there. Just copy and paste your line of code, your console log, and show me what you typed to get that result. Okay, good. Okay, so this is what I want everybody to do. I want you to make it so that we read that right there in the console. But in so doing, you cannot type the number 20, right? So we need to see the whole operation, right? 10 plus 10 equals 20. However, you cannot type 20. So you need to figure out a way to send this to the console. So we see the plus and the equals as well, right? And the 20, but without typing 20. Okay, I'm gonna, since it looks like we're having some difficulty here. So I'll show you what you already know how to do, right? If we were to type console log 10 plus 10, right? We are going to get 20, right? If we were to type the same thing, essentially, console.log 2 times 10, right? We get the same answer, 20. Okay, so we know how to get the number 20. There's more than one this way. We could put 5 times 4 or 40 divided by 2 or whatever we wanted. We could put that to get the result 20. All right, so we know how to get the 20 without typing 20, right? Now we want to get 10 plus 10 equals. Well, we know how to do that too. We just did that right there, essentially. So if we put console.log string 10 plus 10 equals, right? We're going to see 10 plus 10 equals, right? 10 plus 10 equals here in the console. Now we have to put them together, right? We have to see 10 plus 10 equals, but we want to put the whole thing together. So we also see 20, but we can't type 20, right? How do we do that? Well, we put this together with this or that, right? We concatenate. All right, so console.log, and we start here, 10 plus 10 equals, 10 plus 10 equals. That's the first part. Then, after the quotes, we put a plus, and then we can do 2 times 10. Since this is multiplication, right, it does this first. So we're going to get 10 plus 10 equals 20. Now, this is arithmetic. We're not going to do a bunch of math in this section. I'm just showing you this because we all know arithmetic. We all know how to add and subtract. I'm trying to do something super simple to demonstrate how concatenation works, right? Because we're going to use concatenation a lot in the next stuff. So that's it's important that we understand how it works, right? Here, we just have a string. This is not a numerical operation. It's just a string. This string has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 characters, right? These 10 characters. It looks like a numerical operation, but it's not. This is a numerical operation, right? This is multiplication. So this runs first because, PEMDAS, right? Multiplication goes first, and then addition. So we first get the string here, we add that, but this happens first, so we get 10 plus 10 equals 20. All right. Great. So we're going to take a little break from that. How about we just take a break? So it is almost 11 o'clock, right? How about we take, say, 15 minutes from now? So around a little bit after 11 o'clock, like 11:10 around, we'll resume again, okay? And we'll do some more JavaScript. We'll actually affect the way the page looks eventually before we leave today. So yeah, around 11:10, okay? All right, see you shortly. Okay, we're back, or I'm back. All right, let me get everything over here. All right, so let me set this up again. 1 second. I'll share my screen. Okay, so we're gonna stop with this file. This is more than enough in one file. Make sure that you comment everything out because we're going to be adding other files and we don't want stuff like right now, everything in mine is commented out. So nothing happens in my console because when we add other files here, we don't want like stray pieces of information from this file to go in here. So just I want this all to be here so we can still see what code we've done, but it's all commented out, so it's not being activated. So I want to create another file in the JavaScript folder or JS folder. So new file. We're going to call this script02.js because we're so creative. Script02. Now, since we have another script here, not just script1, but script2 also, we need to go to our index. And this is the link for the first script. We need another link for the second script. Oops. Script02. Okay, in script02, so it's exactly the same right here. The only difference is I added the 2 instead of the 1. Let's make sure that script02 is connected now. And let's send a piece of information to the console. It can be anything. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. So if you can see blah, 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 or whatever you put in there, you can put anything. My dog is cute, whatever you want to put. If you can see it in the console, then you know that the second script is also connected to the index. Right? Blah, 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 blah. All right, so I know that works. Has everybody got it to work? They're connected. I don't need this line of code. Excuse me. So I'm just going to delete it actually. In this file, I want to explore something known as, excuse me, a variable. So a variable is something we're going to be using again all the time, like all the time. This is like an extremely important, like very fundamental basic element. Without variables, we couldn't really do anything. So a variable, you probably have heard of the word variable before if you've ever taken algebra or whatever. A variable, if in an algebraic expression, is usually it's a letter that sort of stands in the place of an unknown, right? An unknown number that you have to solve for. So it represents a number. Variables in JavaScript are not completely different, but they're actually like little containers and contain a piece of information, usually a number, but not always. It can be also a string or a Boolean, right? So let me write that down. A variable is a kind of container that contains a single element of data. Each is okay. So a variable is something we will be using constantly. We basically create these little containers that we name and then assign them some data, right? Or put some data inside of it. The word variable also means changeable, right? So it means that things can change or vary. So that means for a variable that we can assign it a piece of data and then assign it a different piece of data. That value that it gets can change. So how do we declare a variable? Well, we're going to create a variable. And the way we do it was we use the var keyword. That means whatever follows is a variable. There's another word we could use, which we'll talk about later. But var seems to make sense because var is the first three letters of the word variable, right? So var, and then what follows is the name that you want to give it. It can be any name. I could call it Diane if I want. That doesn't really make any sense because what is Diane going to hold? Is it going to hold number? Is it going to hold a string? Usually you want the name of your variable to tell you something about its function or what kind of information it has, right? So I'm just going to call it num. Why not? Var num. That tells me probably that what kind of value is it's assigned is numerical, right? So initialize So we've declared it, and that means that this variable now exists. We've created a container, and we've given it a name num, but it doesn't have a value yet, right? So we're going to assign it its first value. Num equals, say, 25. Okay. So now the variable num has the value of 25. We can test that using the console to make sure it is. Okay. Console.log num. So we've generated the variable, we've assigned it a value, and now we're going to see what that value is. 25. It doesn't put, notice there are no quotes here, right? This is not a string. If we put the quotes around num, right, we wouldn't see 25 anymore. We'd see NUM. But without the quotes, since we've declared a variable, num now refers to whatever value is in that. Okay. So then we get 25. Okay, let's play around a little bit with this. First, what if I forget to assign a value to it, right? Let's just comment that out for a moment. Let's say I forget to assign a value to num. What's going to come out here? It says undefined. Right? So when you have it doesn't give me an error, right? It just means that I haven't assigned it a piece of data yet. It's undefined what its value is, right? What if I don't even declare it? So I neither declare it nor define it, assign it a value. What happens now? That's when I get an error. And this error says uncaught reference error. Num is not defined. So now when you get errors, and you're going to get lots of errors, when you get errors, I want you to read it and try to make sense of it, right? Now, sometimes it says weird things like uncaught reference error. Well, what the hell does uncaught mean? And what does reference error mean? Well, the word reference, when we use the word reference means you're referring to something, right? If I refer to Kathy, you're gonna like not know who Kathy is because there's nobody in the class named Kathy, and you're gonna know who is he referring to, right? What does this name Kathy refer to? There's nobody named Kathy. I don't know a Kathy. And so that's what it's doing here. Is asking me, what am I referring to? What is the reference of num? I'm referring to num here, like the code should know what I'm talking about, but I haven't created num yet, right? I haven't declared it yet. So I'm referring to something that doesn't exist. When it's not exist, it basically means it's not defined, right? So that's what's happening here is whenever you look at an error and it says uncaught reference error, it just means you're using something that it doesn't know what the hell you're talking about. What is that? What am I referring to here, right? What it assumes it's a variable or some kind of piece of code. It doesn't have quotes, so it's not a string. It assumes it's a variable, but it doesn't know what I'm talking about. Okay. Now let's do some more. I'm going to comment all that out. I can also I can declare and initialize in one step if I want to. I can type var num1 equals, say, 100. Right? I can put those two steps together where I declare and initialize together in one step, which is more efficient, right? We're always looking for efficiency when we're coding, because the less code we type, the faster the browser will read it. So efficiency is the name of the game when we're dealing with computers. All right, let's create another variable, var num2 equals 200, let's say. Okay. Now let's test to make sure we get those values. So I'm gonna type console.log. Now, before I told you the console log requires one parameter, it can actually do more than one. I can put num1, that's my first parameter. And if I want another one, I can put num2 after a comma. 1, 2. If I had more, I could put more, as long as I separate them by commas. We get 100 and 200, 100 and 200. Let's create a third variable and call it sum. And the value of sum is going to be the sum of num1 plus num2. Okay. And then console.log sum. All right, and that gives us 300. Okay, how's it going? So you're probably wondering what the hell I'm going to do with variables. I mean, that they're going to be very valuable to us in the future. We're going to use them constantly. These are just me demonstrating how they work to you, basically. But you'll, I think, start to understand a bit more of how they work as we do more, right? So in the first script, I talked about data basically a lot, and concatenation, the three types of data, right? String, numerical, and Boolean. And in the second one, I've talked about variables, right? Both of these things are important to know about. They're sort of the basic stuff, right? Now I want to do something that actually affects the browser page itself. All right, so you're going to need to download an image. It doesn't matter, any image, and put it in the images folder, okay? Download an image and put it in the images folder. So I'll have to do the same. So let's see, what kind of image do I want to see today? What do I want to see today? How about, I don't know, a bird? Since I have a purple page, are there purple birds? Ooh, there are purple birds. So I'm going to take a purple bird. But maybe that's kind of pretty. Let's do that one. It looks fake. Okay. Wow. Amazing, right? Save images. Purple bird. Oh, purple bird. .jpg. Okay. So I have purple bird in my images folder. Righty. For this next part, we're going to need another script file, right? So another JavaScript file. So I'm going to, in the JS folder, create a new file. I'm just going to be boring and call it script3.js. Excuse me. Once I add that third file, I want to make sure that I have the link here as well in my index. Okay. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I want to, when the page loads, I want to change my heading. So when the page loads, instead of saying introduction to JavaScript, I want it to be something else. And I can do that with JavaScript if I want to, right? In order to do that, though, I don't need to, but one of the ways to do that is to assign a name, an ID to this h1 tag. Just like I have an ID for the div tag, I can do that for h1 tags too. So I'm going to put ID for my h1 equals, let's just put title. Why not? No, not title, because we have title up here. Let's just call it H for heading. Right? Just H. H for heading. Keep it simple. So I have a new ID named H, and I'm going to use that with JavaScript to insert a new title here when the page loads. Okay, y'all with me? I'm going to start with the text. We'll do the image in a minute. So we're going to go to the script 3. So we've learned 2 JavaScript functions so far, right? We've learned the alert function, and we've learned the console.log function, right? Those are 2 JavaScript functions that we've learned. There are many, 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 many of these. There's another one that we're about to learn, and that is document.getElement by ID. Now, I put these here because these are, particularly these 2 are ones we're going to use a lot of, right? We use over and over and over and over again. All right, notice that this one also has a dot in between. Again, we'll talk about why that is in a future date. All right, document.getElement by ID. Well, this thing that we're typing, this page right here, right? The index is our document. And the document can perform certain activities. One of the activities that the document can perform, or the things that the document can do, is to get one of its elements, right? What is an element? Well, the body is an element. The div is an element. The h1 is an element. These are all elements, right, in the document. This is my document, right? This is my document. And the document is composed of elements. One of the elements is the h1. So I can say use getElement by ID, by its ID, right? And I've given 2 elements an ID. In my document, I've given the div an ID of wrapper, and I've given the h1 the ID of h. So I can get those by their IDs. What does it mean to get something? It basically means to hold it, right? I got it, right? I have it now, right? Once you have something, or once you get something, you can do many things with it. I could break this glass, right, if I wanted to. I don't want to. I could spill water on my computer. I don't want to do that either. But there's many things I could do with it once I've got it. One of the things I can do with the h1, right, is change its contents. What we call its value, or its inner, well, we'll see in a second. So I can change it. Once I can make it disappear. I can make it change colors. I could make it move, but I'm just going to change the text. Okay, let's take a look at how that works. Well, it's actually not going to work first because I'm going to make an error, but you'll see. All right, so document.getElement by ID. And what we put, notice, just like alert and console log, we have the parenthesis for this function. So we need to put something between the parentheses. That's its parameter. And if we're going to get something by its ID, we need to say which ID are we going to get, right? The ID we're going to get is just the one H, right? H for heading. Okay, now I've got it. What do I want to do with it? I've got it. What am I going to do with it? All right. Dot inner HTML. That's the stuff in between, right? That's The inner HTML for that right now is that, but I'm going to change that. Equals, and I can put whatever I want. I'm going to put, to start with, hello world. We've done that before. So this is a string, right? And I hope to put that string inside the HTML of H. Well, this is H, right? And this is what's inside the HTML right now. So I want to replace that with this. That's the goal. It's not going to work, but that's the goal. All right. So save that, reload the page, and we get an error. It says uncaught type error, document.getElement by ID, and then it has, notice it has 3 little dots in between the parenthesis, is null. What does null mean?
Empty.
Yeah, basically empty, right? It has nothing in it. Well, and it has 3 dots because it can't even say what that is. It doesn't say H there. It just says ... Why is that? Well, that's because it doesn't know what H is. It doesn't even know H exists yet. Why is that? Well, this is the link that connects the document to my script, right? When the browser reads this code, it reads it from top to bottom. When it gets to this line, right? When it gets to line 10, that's the link to my script. It goes directly to my script and does this. And then it sees this line of code and it says, what is H? Because it hasn't read H yet. It has 5 more lines to go before it gets to H, right? So by the time it reads that JavaScript in the other file, this doesn't exist yet. This has not been rendered yet. So it doesn't exist. It's like, again, it doesn't know what I'm talking about, right? It's saying there's no such thing. It's null. H is null. There's no, this ID doesn't even exist yet. So what's the solution here? Well, we have to force this file to load completely before it does this. So I want the HTML file to completely load. Then once it's done loading, then I want it to do that. Okay. In order to do that, I am going to put this in a new function that will wait until the browser window opens. So window, wait, let me just write that in there. So this is the line of code that I want to run, but I want to wait until the browser, this document fully loads. So we type window dot on load. This is my window, the browser window. When the browser window fully loads, equals function. So this is key. This is what makes it wait until the browser window opens. Now it works. Okay. Did that work for you?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to do two more things. We're going to insert an image, and we're going to insert some text, different text. All right, let's go back to our HTML for a moment, though. I want to create some spots, a place for the image and a place for that text. Inside my wrapper, underneath the H1, I'm going to put two more divs. The first one is going to be IMG. It's going to be its ID. That's where I'm going to insert my image. Sorry. The next one is going to be TXT. Now, I'm also going to put a couple buttons here. Oh, no, I'm going to do the image first. All right, so I have two buttons there. This we have in the code, but it's not visible, right? It's not there yet, but it's still there, right? We just can't see it because there's nothing in there, right? Might as well. All right, so we're going to make these buttons work though, right? When I click here, I want an image to appear. When I click here, I'm going to have some text appear. Okay, so let's do the image first. Everybody get that? All right. I still have a number 300 appearing here, right? That's in my other script. I want to comment out that console log so that doesn't happen. All right, so I need to create something here that happens only when I press this button, right? That happens only when I press this button. These are what we've already learned, the alert, console log, and document.getElement by ID are known as built-in functions. That means they're part of JavaScript. There are other functions that we invent ourselves. And we call these user-defined functions, right? So I'm defining this, I'm creating this all on my own. Right? And what I wanted to do is to insert an image here. I already know how to insert text, right? So that will be helpful, right? And I use the getElementById function to do that, right? But I want to insert an image, and I only want it to happen not when the window loads automatically, but when I click this button. All right, so I'm going to create my function. So I type function. This is a user-defined function. I'm inventing this. So I'm going to give it a name, and I'm inventing the name entirely myself. I'm going to call it, I don't know, place or put image. I just made that up. Since it's a function, I put the parenthesis after. And then just like this function, I put braces. Now, what I want this function to do is to insert an image, right? Like I said, I know how to insert text. How do I insert image? Basically the same way. Document dot get element by ID. And what's the ID? Remember, we called it IMG here. So IMG this time. And then inner HTML equals. Now this time we don't put text. We're going to put HTML. So I still have to use quotes. And then I just put what I need there to put an image, which is the IMG tag. IMG SRC, and then equals. Now I'm already putting all of this in between quotes. And normally when we put an image, we put quotes again, right? But we can't put quotes and then quotes within quotes, double quotes. So I have to use single quotes here. So src equals, and this is where I put the instructions of where to go find my image in my images folder. All right. Images is the name of my folder, slash, and then my image name is purplebird.jpg. Hold on a second. My code is about to go to the other edge of the frame, so I did word wrap. So purplebird.jpg. And then the close of that tag. Right, so I can hit enter here. Let's put it all in the next line. Images, all this between quotes, right? Image src in single quotes for the URL. Right? So let me save that. That's this line of code, hopefully, will put an image in the page when we click this button. Now it's not working yet because we haven't done anything to the button to make it do this. My button is just a button right now. It doesn't have anything to connect to this piece of code, to this function. I need to connect the button to this function. So the way I do that is on click equals, and then the name of the function. Put img. That's the name of my function, right? Put img, which is this function right there. But nothing happens. Oh, it did. Good. I was thinking it wouldn't happen, but it did. My image is way too big. So I'm going to style it with CSS so that it's not so big. Once I get, did you get the image to put in there? So this is what we call calling a function. When we call a function by its name, it activates it. So we click on the button, it calls the function, and then the function runs this line of code. Most functions have more code, but we're starting simple, right? This is just one line of code. Well, it's not simple, but simple as functions go. Anybody didn't get this to put an image there? Everybody good?
Yeah, I got it.
So I want to make this image fit into the browser window, into the wrapper. So I'm going to go to my CSS and do this wrapper img width 100%. Right, so that is going to make it fit within the wrapper so we can see the whole image. Right. Almost done. All right, so let's do another function that adds text into this, right? All right, so I'm going to call it function put text. Same idea here. We do the same thing basically, right? I'm going to add a little wrinkle to this in a minute, but let's just do that. Document dot get element by ID, this time txt dot inner HTML equals, in my case, I'm going to call pretty purple bird. Okay. Add the image. Oh, what am I missing? How come it doesn't work yet? How come it doesn't add the text? It adds the image, right? Why doesn't it add the text? What did I forget? Well, remember when we added the image, we went back to the index and we did the on click for the image, right? We have to do the same thing for the text. On click equals put txt. Add image, add text. Now, one last piece here. Did everybody get that? It's the same as the image, essentially, the same as the hello world, basically, right? We're just doing it with a button this time. You can put whatever text you want. It doesn't have to be pretty purple bird. All right. One last thing here. I'm going to add a text box. Let's call it something else. Let's call it caption. So I just added this text box and that produced this. I've given it the ID of caption. So what I want to do is when I type something here and click on the text button, I want that text to appear here. Right now, it just says pretty purple bird, but I wanted to say anything, blah, 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 yada, 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 right? What if I want that there instead of pretty purple bird? Okay. Well, that just means I have to get the text from this box and put it here. And again, I'm going to use the ID here to do it. Okay. Let's try that. So to do that, I need a variable. I'm going to call it T for text. Now, I don't know what the value of T is. All I know is that I want it to be whatever is in this box. I could put pretty purple bird. Let's do that first. And then I just have to put T there, right? This will still work the same way it was before, where I put those words into the variable, assign it to the variable, and then use the variable here. That works the same way as it was working. Pretty purple bird. But what I want to do is put whatever text here. La, la, la. I want to put that text there, here. So that means instead of giving it a value, pretty purple bird, like this, I have to get the value from the box. And I use the ID caption to do that. So same function here, document to get element by ID. To get that ID, document dot get element by ID. The ID that I want to get is caption. Now this time I want to get whatever's in this box. That whatever's in the box is called its value. So the value of caption. Caption is that box, so dot value. The value of caption. Remember, caption is that text box. So this is the value of caption right now. If I put my name there, that would be the value of caption. Let's see if that works. It does. I could type whatever I want there. Blah, blah. Okay, oops. Any questions? Nobody asked any questions in this class. What's going on? Are y'all geniuses? Everybody's a genius.
I have
Yeah.
do you mind showing me the CSS again? Because I think
Yeah, sure.
for mine, like my picture wasn't like sent in the center, in the central. Wait, is yours like by the center, by the center?
It does that. It may have something to do with how you created your wrapper. So if we go to the index, all of this, right,
Mm-hmm.
is is inside the wrapper.
Mm,
So my
uh,
this is my closing wrapper div. It's down at the bottom. You want me to take a look at your code?
yeah.
All right, so let me stop sharing. I'll make you co-host. Why don't you share?
Uh,
So do me a favor and open your window for your code a little bit wider. Just make it a bit wider for me. No, the code. Sorry.
oh, the code. All right.
Yeah, just make it a bit wider. Spread it out. Just drag the edge. Yeah, there you go. Just like that. Perfect. All right. Let me just take a look here. So your wrapper. All right, that looks fine. Right button. That looks fine. Caption. Okay. Yeah, so yours is not centered, so that's interesting. So wrapper div. Okay, go up to your CSS.
Yeah, maybe something about the CSS.
Oh, it's not min. So okay, it's so background color fine, width 60%. So instead of min width, take that whole line out.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you could put it in there. I just didn't. Actually, you can leave that there. Now that I just undo that. Sorry.
Mhm.
But underneath that line, put margin, and then 0, and then auto. No semicolon. Yeah. And then auto. There you go. That's what centers it.
Okay. Yeah, now I got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Let me stop sharing.
Okay. Anybody else? Y'all are all good?
Yeah.
Okay. So that is it for today. You know that your projects are due on Thursday, right? I can be available tomorrow. So if you need my help today, I'll be today's Tuesday, right? Do I have anything to do today? I'll probably be available this evening, probably be available tomorrow morning. So the sooner the better. If you need help, we can schedule a time before Thursday if you need any assistance, okay? But try not to wait too late because I may not have it. I may have my own may get busy, right? So if you need help, just let me know and I'll try to help you out. Okay. All right. Good luck on your finishing up your projects. And I'll see you on Thursday. Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Have a nice day.
You too. Have a good one.
Oh, are we gonna run how to close the button?
How to do what?
How to close the button?
What do you mean close the button?
Oh, we can pop up by add image and add text. Yeah, but
You mean remove
yeah, remove.
to disappear?
Yeah,
So
disappear.
so if we want, yeah, that's next class.
Ah, yeah.
So we click on a button to make something appear and click on something to make something disappear.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, next class.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.